He wasn't just the new kid. He carried a secret that could destroy everything, and when it finally came out, the whole school was shaken. You won't believe what I discovered about him. When I was 16, I thought I had high school figured out. My days were predictable. Wake up, half sleep through first period, sit with the same group of friends at lunch, survive track practice, and collapse at home. Life wasn't perfect, but it was comfortable, like a pair of old sneakers that fit just right, even if they were kind of worn out. That's why the day a new student walked into our third period history class, everything shifted. It wasn't just that he was new. We got transfers all the time. Kids moved in and out of our town because of jobs, divorces, military assignments, whatever. Usually, any kid would introduce themselves awkwardly, sit down, and blend into the background. But this guy, he didn't blend in at all. The teacher cleared her throat and said, "Class, this is Ethan. He'll be joining us for the rest of the semester." She gestured to the seat 2 rows over from mine. Ethan gave a half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He had this sharp, alert look about him, like he was constantly assessing the room for threats. His clothes weren't anything special, jeans and a black hoodie, but the way he carried himself made him stand out. People whispered as he walked by. Not loud enough for the teacher to hear, but I caught fragments. "That's him. He's the one." I heard before they clammed up when Ethan looked their way. I wasn't usually the type to care about school gossip, but something about the way everyone reacted stuck with me. It wasn't the normal curiosity about a new student. This was fear. At lunch, I slid my tray next to my best friend, Claire. She was the unofficial hub of information in our grade. If you wanted to know who was dating, who was cheating, or who got caught vaping behind the gym, Claire had the scoop. "So," I said casually, sabbing at my fries, "what's the deal with the new guy?" "Ethan." Claire's eyes lit up, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. "Oh my God, you haven't heard." I shook my head. "Okay," she whispered, leaning closer. "Supposedly, he transferred here because something happened at his old school. Like, really bad. Some people say there was a fight, others say it was worse than that. My cousin's friend swears Ethan got expelled for, like, putting another kid in the hospital." I almost laughed. High school rumors had a way of spiraling out of control fast. "That sounds a little dramatic," Claire shrugged. "Believe what you want, but look around, people are freaked out by him." And she was right. Everywhere Ethan went, people either stared or avoided eye contact completely. He didn't sit with anyone at lunch, didn't join any conversations, didn't even pull out his phone like most of us did to avoid awkward silence. He just sat there, eating methodically, like he was counting every bite. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes scanning the room. It wasn't like he was looking for friends or trying to fit in. It was more like he was waiting for something or someone. The next few days were the same. Ethan kept to himself, and everyone else kept their distance. Teachers didn't call on him much, maybe because they sensed the tension too. But then something happened that made it impossible for me to ignore him. We were in history again, watching a documentary about the Cold War. The lights were dim, and everyone was half asleep. I noticed Ethan scribbling in his notebook, not just random doodles like most of us, but full paragraphs, diagrams, little sketches that looked precise, military precise. When the bell rang, his notebook slid off his desk as he stood up. Papers scattered everywhere. I bent down to help him gather them, and that's when I froze. One of the pages wasn't notes about the Cold War. It was a detailed sketch of the layout of our school. Every hallway, every classroom, even the emergency exits. And written in the margins were little notes, things like blind spot, locked during day, and camera broken. My stomach dropped. Ethan snatched the paper from my hand so fast I almost didn't see it. His face didn't change, but his eyes locked on mine with this cold intensity. "Don't," he said quietly. Just one word, but it felt like a warning. I managed to nod, my mouth dry, and he shoved the papers back into his folder before walking out of the room. For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. Why would a new student have a map of our school? Why label the exits and cameras? It wasn't normal. It wasn't innocent. And the more I thought about it, the more the rumors about him started to feel less like exaggerations and more like warnings. That night, I barely slept. My brain kept replaying that moment when Ethan looked at me. The way his voice sounded low, steady, and deadly serious. By morning, I had convinced myself to let it go. Maybe he was just weirdly obsessive about details. Maybe he liked drawing blueprints. Maybe there was a perfectly normal explanation. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. And it wasn't long before Ethan's secrets started to unravel piece by piece in ways none of us could have predicted. The next morning, I tried to shove the whole Ethan situation out of my head. High school was already stressful enough, tests, track meets, and figuring out who was going to homecoming with who. The last thing I needed was to get wrapped up in some conspiracy about a kid I barely knew. But pretending it didn't bother me didn't make it go away. Every time I saw him in the hallway, I felt that same unease crawl up my spine. And then, things started getting stranger. On Friday, we had a fire drill. Nothing unusual, just the loud alarm blaring and everyone groaning about missing class. But while the rest of us laughed and joked on the football field, Ethan didn't. He stood a few feet away from the crowd, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning every single exit door, every teacher, every cluster of students. It wasn't casual either. He was analyzing, memorizing. Claire noticed it too. "Okay, that's creepy," she muttered, nudging me. "Why does he look like he's planning a heist?" I forced a laugh, but my stomach churned, because I knew about that map in his notebook. Later that day, I decided I had to at least try talking to him again. Maybe I could figure out if there was some innocent reason behind all of this. So in English class, when the teacher paired us up for a partner discussion, I didn't argue when Ethan sat down across from me. We were supposed to be analyzing a poem, but he didn't open his book. Instead, he just looked at me and said quietly, "You didn't tell anyone." I froze. "About what?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He gave me that same piercing look as before. "Don't play dumb. You saw my notes." My throat went dry. I didn't think it was my business. "Good," he said simply. Then, as if flipping a switch, he opened his book and started talking about the poem like nothing had happened. I wanted to push, to ask him why he had a map of the school. But his tone made it clear if I crossed the line, there would be consequences. That night, I told myself I'd stop obsessing. But curiosity has a way of eating at you. So, I did what any teenager in 2025 would do. I googled him. I typed in his name, Ethan last name, along with the name of the town he'd moved from. At first, nothing came up. No Instagram, no TikTok, no Facebook. It was like he'd erased himself from the internet. Which was weird, because literally everyone had something. Finally, buried on the third page of search results, I found a local newspaper article from about 6 months ago. The headline made my blood run cold: "Local high school lockdown after violent altercation between students." The article was vague, probably because of privacy laws about minors. But it said that a fight had broken out between two male students, one of whom was hospitalized with serious injuries. The other, a 16-year-old boy named Ethan. No charges were filed, but the school board had taken action. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart racing. The next day at school, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every time he brushed past me in the hallway, I imagined fists flying, blood on the floor, sirens blaring. Was that why everyone was so afraid of him? But then something happened that made me realize the fight wasn't the whole story. During gym class, we were playing basketball. I was on the sidelines when one of the guys, Matt, the loudmouth jock who thought he was hilarious, decided to mess with Ethan. "Hey, new kid," Matt called out, tossing the ball hard at Ethan's chest. "Bet you don't even know how to play." Ethan caught the ball without flinching. He didn't say a word. He just started dribbling, fast and controlled, before sinking a perfect three-pointer like he'd done it 1,000 times. Everyone whistled and cheered, but Matt wasn't done. He stepped in front of Ethan, blocking his path. "Guess you're good for something after all," Matt sneered. Then, lowering his voice just enough, he added, "Heard you almost killed a guy at your last school." That true. The gym went silent. Ethan's jaw tightened. For a split second, I thought he was going to snap. But instead, he dropped the ball, stepped around Matt, and walked out of the gym without a word. The coach yelled after him, but Ethan didn't stop. I should have felt relieved that he didn't explode. But something about the way he walked out, calm, steady, like he was in complete control, scared me more than if he'd thrown a punch. That night, lying in bed, I realized something important. Ethan wasn't just dangerous because of what he'd done. He was dangerous because of what he didn't do. He had this cold patience, like he could wait forever for the right moment to act. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the map, the fire drill, the way he studied everything. Ethan wasn't just planning for something. He was preparing. And whatever it was, I had the sinking feeling our school was right in the middle of it. After the basketball incident, everyone had an opinion about Ethan. Some people whispered that he was unstable, that he'd almost lost it but held back. Others thought he was just trying to keep his head down, that maybe he was misunderstood. But to me, the way he left the gym said more than words ever could. He wasn't ignoring Matt because he was weak. He was ignoring him because he didn't need to prove anything. That kind of control terrified me. By Monday, the rumor mill was in overdrive. One girl swore she'd seen scars on his arms. Another said her cousin's friend at his old school had told her Ethan brought a weapon to class. None of it was confirmed, but the lack of answers only made the stories more believable. I tried not to get pulled into the gossip, but I couldn't help myself. At lunch, I leaned across the table to Claire. "Do you think it's true? About the fight? About everything?" She shrugged, picking at her salad. "I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Look at him. He walks around like he's casing the joint." That phrase stuck with me, casing the joint. It sounded too close to what I'd actually seen in his notebook. That night, I made a decision. I needed proof. Not rumors, not guesses, actual proof of what Ethan was planning. The next day after last period, I hung back in the hallway, pretending to tie my shoe while Ethan slipped his notebook into his bag. I waited until he walked out, then followed him at a distance. Most kids either went straight to the bus or hung around the parking lot. Ethan didn't. He walked past the school, down the block, and into a small park nearby. I stayed far enough back that he wouldn't notice me, ducking behind trees and benches like some wannabe spy. He sat on a bench for a long time, writing in that same notebook. From where I was, I couldn't see what he was writing, but every so often he'd look up and scan the park, his eyes sharp and restless. It didn't feel like he was just doodling. It felt like he was documenting something important. When the sun started to dip, he finally stood, stuffed the notebook away, and walked off. I thought I was in the clear until he suddenly stopped, turned around, and looked straight at me. My heart stopped. For a long moment, he just stared, like he was calculating something. Then he said, loud enough for me to hear across the park, "Curiosity can get you hurt." I froze, every muscle in my body locked. Then, without another word, he walked away. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The warning in his voice wasn't just casual, it was personal. He knew I was following him. And worse, he didn't seem scared or annoyed. He seemed amused. I thought about telling a teacher, or even my mom, but what was I supposed to say? Hey, the new kid draws maps of the school and threatened me in the park. They'd either laugh me off or accuse me of starting rumors. So I kept it to myself. The next week, things got even weirder. In chemistry class, we were paired for a lab experiment, and of course, I got stuck with Ethan. My hands shook as we set up the Bunsen burner, but Ethan worked with a kind of airy precision. He measured everything perfectly, wrote down every step like a scientist. Halfway through, he leaned closer to me, his voice low. "You don't know the whole story," he said. I swallowed hard. "What story?" He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Not coldness, not calculation, something closer to pain. "They didn't tell you what really happened at my last school," he murmured. Before I could ask, the teacher interrupted, reminding us to focus on the experiment. Ethan went silent again, scribbling in his notebook like nothing had happened. But his words stuck in my head for the rest of the day. What hadn't they told us? That night, I found myself searching again. More articles, more scraps of information. Finally, I stumbled across a forum post from someone claiming to go to Ethan's old school. The post was short, but chilling. Everyone thinks Ethan snapped that day. But that's not the truth. He wasn't the villain. He was the only one who saw what was coming. And nobody listened. I read it over and over again, my mind racing. What did that mean? What was coming? The next day, I tried to ask him. We were walking out of class when I said quietly, "I saw something online. About your old school." His head snapped toward me, his jaw tight. "Stay out of it." "But I mean it." He cut me off, his voice low and sharp. "For your own good." I wanted to back off. I really did. But there was something inside me, a mix of fear and curiosity that wouldn't let me. Because now, it wasn't just about what Ethan might do. It was about what had already happened. And whatever it was big enough to follow him here. And deep down, I knew the truth was going to come out. The only question was whether we'd all survive it. The tension around Ethan only grew as the weeks went on. Some teachers treated him like he was invisible, never calling on him, never pushing him. Others watched him too closely, like they were waiting for him to slip up. But the students, we couldn't stop whispering about him. He had become this dark mystery at the center of our school. The only problem was, mysteries don't stay buried forever. One rainy Tuesday, we were in the library for a research assignment. The room was mostly quiet, just the sound of keyboards clicking and books rustling. I was trying to focus, but I kept seeking glances at Ethan. He wasn't using the computer like the rest of us. He had his notebook open again. This time, curiosity got the better of me. When he stepped away to grab a book from the shelf, I slid into his chair and peeked at the open page. My stomach clenched. It wasn't just another map of the school. It was a schedule. Timelines written in neat, blocky handwriting. Times of day. Number of students in hallways. Which teachers did hall duty. Notes about how long it took the building to empty during drills. I slammed the notebook shut just as Ethan came back. He looked at me, then down at the notebook, then back at me. For a terrifying moment, I thought he was going to lose it. But instead, he sat down calmly, opened the notebook, and said softly, "I told you to stay out of it. Why are you doing this?" I blurted, "Why do you have all this? The maps, the notes, it looks like you're planning something." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand. Then explain it," I hissed. But he didn't. He just closed the notebook, packed up his bag, and walked out of the library without another word. The silence he left behind was worse than if he'd shouted. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I printed out the article I'd found about his old school, along with the forum posts, and I brought them to Claire. She read them slowly, her eyes widening. "Oh my God, this is insane. What if he's planning something here?" "That's what I'm afraid of," I admitted. "So, what do we do?" "Tell someone." I hesitated. Every time I thought about going to an adult, I pictured Ethan's face in the park, the way he'd said curiosity can get you hurt. If he found out, I'd told. But then again, what if he really was dangerous? Could I live with myself if I stayed silent and something happened? The pressure was eating me alive. 2 days later, everything escalated. It started during lunch. I was sitting with Claire when Ethan walked in. He never sat near us, but that day, he stopped at our table. Everyone around us went dead silent as he dropped his tray and sat down across from me. "You've been digging," he said quietly. My heart stopped. "What?" He leaned in just enough so only Claire and I could hear. "The article. The forum. You think I don't know?" "I see everything." Claire's eyes widened, but she didn't say a word. I swallowed hard. "Then tell us the truth. What really happened?" For the first time, Ethan didn't look angry. He looked tired, almost broken. "There was a kid at my last school," he said slowly. "He brought something to campus he wasn't supposed to. I tried to warn the teachers. Nobody listened. And then, it happened." "What happened?" Claire whispered. Ethan's voice dropped lower. "The lockdown. The fight. Everyone thinks I started it. But I wasn't fighting him. I was trying to stop him." The cafeteria noise faded into nothing. My chest tightened. Stop him from what? Ethan's eyes met mine. And in that moment, I knew the rumors had missed the real story. "He was planning something," Ethan said. "Something worse than a fight. I caught him before it started. But the school covered it up. Said it was just a fight." Easier for them, cleaner, but they didn't erase what I knew. And they didn't stop me from being ready if it ever happened again. He stood up, grabbed his tray, and walked away, leaving me and Claire staring at each other, speechless. That night, I couldn't think of anything else. Was he telling the truth? Was he lying to make himself look like a hero? Or was it worse, was he using that story as cover for his own plan? And if he really was getting ready, what exactly was he preparing for this time? After that conversation in the cafeteria, I couldn't look at Ethan the same way. Part of me wanted to believe him. His eyes that day hadn't held the cold sharpness I'd seen before. They held something closer to desperation. Like he needed someone, anyone, to understand. But another part of me couldn't shake the knees. What if his story about stopping someone was just a convenient excuse? Claire leaned hard into suspicion. He's manipulating you, she said the next day. Think about it. He knows you've been watching him, so he spins some tragic backstory to make you feel guilty. Classic move. But what if it's true? I asked quietly. What if he really did stop something, and now he's, I don't know, trying to be prepared? Claire gave me a look. Then why keep it secret? Why not go to the principal, or the cops, or literally anyone in authority? Why creep around drawing maps and timing drills? She had a point. Ethan's methods didn't scream concerned citizen. They screamed planning something. That week, strange things started happening around school. A fire alarm went off during third period, but the fire department later said there hadn't been a malfunction. They couldn't explain why it triggered. A security camera in the east hallway suddenly stopped working. And during another drill, Ethan positioned himself near one of the back exits, scribbling notes faster than I'd ever seen him write. Students started joking that he was cursed. That weird stuff only happened because he was there. But to me, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt connected. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. After school, I caught up to him in the parking lot. Ethan, I called out. He turned, his expression unreadable. We need to talk. Really talk. You can't keep whatever this is bottled up. People are noticing. Something's going on, and if you're not careful, it's going to blow up in your face. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he sighed and said, fine, meet me tomorrow. After practice. The bleachers, I almost backed out. Almost decided it was safer to stay away. But my curiosity and maybe my fear wouldn't let me. The next evening, I walked out to the football field. The bleachers were empty except for Ethan, sitting near the top, his hood pulled up against the wind. I climbed up slowly, my heart pounding. You came, he said without looking at me. You asked me to, I replied, settling onto the bench a few feet away. For a while, we just sat in silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. I wasn't lying. About the kid at my last school. He had a weapon. I tried to stop him before he could use it. That's what the fight was. That's why He trailed off, his jaw tightening. Nobody believed me. They said I attacked him. They erased the truth. I swallowed. But why the maps? The notes? Why act like you're planning something? Because I won't let it happen again, he said flatly. Not here. Not to these kids. My blood ran cold. His words sounded noble, but the way he said them, with that same calm determination, made my skin crawl. So, what exactly are you planning? I asked carefully. Ethan finally turned to look at me. His eyes were sharp again, calculating. I don't have to tell you, but you should understand this. When it happens, I'll be the only one ready. And when it's over, maybe then people will realize I wasn't the villain. When what happens? I pressed. But he didn't answer. The next day at school, Claire noticed how shaken I was. I told her everything under the bleachers, and her face drained of color. This is bad, she whispered. He's not just paranoid, he's obsessed. Whether he's right or wrong, that kind of thinking. It's dangerous. I hated to admit it, but she was right. Still, I couldn't stop replaying his words. When it happens, I'll be the only one ready. What if Ethan really did know something we didn't? What if there really was a threat nobody else saw coming? But the darker question clawed at me too. What if the threat wasn't coming to our school? What if the threat was already here and it was Ethan? The words played over and over, twisting in my mind. Did he mean another student was planning something? Or did he mean himself? I couldn't shake the possibility that the threat he was preparing for was nothing more than a phantom in his head, and that his obsession could turn him into exactly what he claimed to fear. The next morning, the school felt different. The hallways were buzzing with rumors. Some kids said Ethan had been caught sneaking into the supply closet. Others swore he'd gotten into an argument with a teacher who'd tried to confiscate his notebook. No one knew the truth, but everyone was watching him. And Ethan, he didn't look rattled. He looked calm. Too calm. Claire cornered me at lunch. We have to tell someone, she hissed. The principal, the counselor, literally anyone. If something happens and we stayed quiet, we'll never forgive ourselves. I wanted to agree. I wanted to walk into the office and dump everything I knew. But then I pictured Ethan's face under the bleachers, the mix of exhaustion and defiance. The way his voice cracked when he said nobody had believed him before. If we told, and he was innocent, we'd destroy what little trust he had left. But if we didn't, and he wasn't, it felt like a trap with no way out. That afternoon, during chemistry, the intercom crackled to life. Attention staff and students, please remain in your classrooms until further notice. The entire class froze. Whispers broke out immediately. Was it a drill? A lockdown? Our teacher tried to calm us, but even she looked nervous. I glanced at Ethan. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't panicking. He was just sitting there, perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the door like he'd been expecting this moment all along. My chest tightened. After what felt like forever, the announcement came again. The hold has been lifted. Thank you for your cooperation. The teacher forced a laugh, muttering something about probably just a security check, but no one believed her. As soon as the bell rang, Claire grabbed my arm. You saw him, right? He knew. He knew something was coming. I don't. I stammered. I don't know, but deep down, I did. That night, I dug through the internet for any mention of Ethan's old school. It took hours, but finally I found it, an old news article. The headline made my blood run cold. Student hospitalized after cafeteria. Fight possible weapon involved. The article said police had investigated rumors of a weapon but found insufficient evidence. The injured student denied ever bringing anything to school. Ethan's name wasn't mentioned, but I recognized the description. He really had been in a fight, and the truth had been buried. I slammed my laptop shut, my head spinning. Either he'd been telling the truth all along and the system had covered it up, or he'd spun the whole thing into a narrative that made him the hero. By the time morning came, I still hadn't decided which version I believed, but it didn't matter anymore, because that day, something happened that none of us could ignore. Halfway through fourth period, the fire alarm screamed to life. Red lights flashed across the hallway. Students poured out of classrooms, shoving each other in the rush to get outside. Teachers shouted instructions, trying to keep order. I searched the crowd desperately until I spotted him, Ethan. He wasn't panicking like the rest of us. He wasn't even moving toward the exits. Instead, he slipped against the current of students, heading deeper into the school, toward the science wing. My heart nearly stopped. Claire grabbed my sleeve. Where's he going? I shook my head, words stuck in my throat. But I already knew. He wasn't running from the fire alarm. He was running toward whatever had set it off. Without thinking, I shoved through the crowd and chased him. Wait, Ethan! I shouted. He didn't stop. We pushed down an empty hallway, the chaos of the evacuation fading behind us. My pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear. Finally, Ethan ducked into a classroom and I followed, slamming the door shut behind me. He was standing at the window, staring outside at the parking lot full of students. His notebook lay open on the desk, pages fluttering from the draft of the open window. What are you doing? I demanded, breathless. He turned slowly, his face unreadable. Proving I was right, he said. My blood turned to ice. Proving what? I asked, my voice cracking. That I'm not crazy, Ethan said quietly. He picked up the notebook, flipping to a page covered in scribbles and arrows. That someone was planning something. That I saw it coming. That I wasn't imagining it. I stepped closer, my eyes darting over the page. It was filled with times, dates, names. Every hallway, every rumor he'd ever overheard, every glance he thought meant something. It looked less like proof and more like paranoia spilling out in ink. Ethan, I whispered. This doesn't prove anything. It just makes you look obsessed. His jaw tightened. That's what everyone always says. Obsession. Paranoia. Crazy. But look outside. I turned to the window. Teachers were corralling students across the lot. Some kids were laughing, treating it like a free break. Others looked scared, whispering about a bomb threat or a gas leak. The fire trucks were already pulling in. Someone set this off, Ethan said. And when they find out who, they'll know I was right. My stomach twisted. And if it wasn't a threat? What if it's just a drill or an accident? He shook his head violently. It's never an accident. For a moment, I thought he was about to cry. His hands trembled as he clutched the notebook like it was the only thing keeping him together. Ethan, I said softly, you're scaring me. He looked at me, then really looked, and something in his eyes shifted. His shoulders sagged. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm scared too, he admitted. The fire alarm finally went silent, replaced by the muffled sound of an announcement echoing through the halls. All clear. Please return to your classrooms. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. All clear. Always all clear. Until it isn't. I didn't know what to say. We walked back outside together, blending into the stream of students re-entering the building. Nobody seemed to notice we'd been missing, but I couldn't stop staring at Ethan, at the way he gripped his notebook like a lifeline. That night, I told Claire everything: the article, the fight at his old school, the way he'd run toward the alarm instead of away. She listened, pale and silent. Do you think he's dangerous? She asked finally. I didn't answer, because I honestly didn't know. The next day, Ethan didn't come to school, or the day after. By the end of the week, the rumors were flying again. Some said his mom pulled him out because of the constant bullying. Others whispered that the principal had quietly expelled him. A few swore they saw police at his house. The truth never came out. Months later, I still thought about him. About his notebook, his warnings, his calmness during the chaos. Was he a prophet who saw danger where no one else did, or was he a broken kid consumed by fear until it became his whole world? The most shocking thing about Ethan wasn't what he knew. It was the fact that I still couldn't decide if I'd escaped a tragedy, or a friend who might have saved me from one.